of TI, welcome to the International.
All right, game one. As our casters were saying, probably the most convincing game we've seen so far in TI5. Of course, we just started, but still. And, of course, coming out from Secret. No big surprise there. Now, when we were looking at the draft earlier, we were looking at IG. We were talking about what can they do, maybe some early aggression and whatnot. The game, though, eventually didn't. The draft even didn't pan out exactly like what some of us were recommending, and now Secret just goes ahead and steamrolls through IG. Where does IG have to change things? Does it start from the draft, or do you think it was also just a lot of things in game?
I think the draft was good, honestly.
I think
they just flat out got outplayed. And a couple of things to highlight. I guess the ancient stack being stolen is a really big deal. It's an effective. I don't know how many stacks there were. If it was
I think it was 3.
So 3. So that's like a gold swing of you lose 1,000 and they gain 1,000. So this is 2,000 net worth swing, right there, right. Which of course has a huge impact on the game. Maybe Gyro doesn't get a key item. Maybe that's what brings TA ahead in the game, right? And when you look at like the actual engagements and the timing, I think the way Secret utilized Undying as like a sponge for everything worked super well. Like they kept surprising IG, I think, with how much heal potential they actually had between Soul Rip and Dazzle, and of course the good timing on the Graves. And S4 is always in Queen of Pain. Amazing Sonic Waves the whole game, right? But that's to be expected when you give them co-op. So.
Okay, now, something that we pointed out right before we went into the game was, okay, well, so they don't have any stuns. Like, they don't really have any way to guarantee lockdowns on the side of Secret. Winter, do you think that the reason that worked out was simply because, like you mentioned, I mean, if any team's going to do that, it's Secret and they're confident enough? Or do you think that's still something that Secret should consider going into future drafts?
I don't think stuns are necessary if you have the right lineup and right execution. Because, like, most of the kills, they killed them so fast. Like, TA just jumps in, melts, and you don't have time to TP or do anything. So you don't really need the stun in those type of situations. So I feel the lack of stuns obviously doesn't really matter too much in that game.
All right. Well, let's take a look at some replays as we talk more about the game. Of course, just to highlight some of the moments. I mean, a
makes
lot of
it very difficult for anyone else from IG to
focused.
chase down. And in fact, he doesn't even kill the Tombstone. He has to move over to help out against.
And as you talked about, Undying acting as the sponge up front, Rupture already blown on the Queen of Pain in the back line, and I mean, it seems like IG, they just simply didn't have enough damage, and I think a lot of that was due to the early pipe pickup by Team Secret, and you'll very rarely see teams pick up pipe, but I think that Puppy and the rest of Team Secret actually pick it up far more often than most teams, and it's a really good item. Like it shouldn't be gotten as often as Mech, but they should be at least like comparable. And
against Zeus is really good.
Against Zeus is very good, and it's I think super underrated.
It's also nice against Gyro. The call down is a lot of AoE magic damage, and even if you like, the nice thing is there's no really like you could argue that against some lineups utilizing pipe is difficult because you need to time it, you need to predict when the damage is coming. You need to precast it in comparison to mech that you post cast. So it's a reactionary item, whereas pipe is it's like use it primitively. But it's very easy against the Zeus lineup. It'll always be useful.
Expensive as well. Like it's hard to get on like sometimes you want to get it on like a lesser hero, but you can't get it on a lesser hero because it just requires too much farm, and you need to get it at a certain, like you mentioned, a specific time. Otherwise, it will be like maybe useless.
I mean, it's still 10% magic resist, Aura. With the,
but the biggest thing is you want to use it to push. So you want to get it at a timing window that you can actually utilize it to push or siege high ground.
I mean, it's also just really useful for Bloodseeker and skirmishes, even if you aren't pushing, so people don't get low. Like, I feel like he wasn't able to really, get out of control.
So, I mean, overall, a situational item, but as you were mentioning, Secret does tend to kind of favor that a lot more, even in those niche situations, compared to other teams. We do have a couple other replays as we're looking through. Mostly, again, Secret just dominating against IG. But as you guys were mentioning, I think you guys brought out some good points. I mean, we were wondering, where does the Undying really fit here? We talked about how Secret doesn't like to play Undying that much, and here they are, bringing it out on the first day of TI5.
You can't. I think this is just a misplay from Burning. He's running into the pit alone with the Gyro in front. Of course, he does have BK Beyond, but he ultimately just gets completely out of position. He runs into a TA who's already killed Roche. That's a one-on-one he's not going to win against Arteeza right then, and then he has to run all the way back.
I mean, it just shows you his sense of desperation. Like, he has to do something, and maybe he'll get lucky enough that, like, he gets bashed, Roshan's at, like, one hit away, he takes it takes Aegis, and that's the sort of play that you have to hope for. I mean, it all starts with preventing TA getting the first Aegis, and that's really difficult, but once you're that far behind, you have to make those sort of plays.
All right, and we do have one last replay, pretty bloody one. where most people do end up dying and having to take a little break from the game. But as we take a look at that, just shows, again, how many fights we did have in this game where Secret ends up taking game 1 against IG.
This is actually the best fight IG get all game. Because they get a pretty good Winter's Curse, I think, in this one, in a moment. It isolates one target. They get S4 out. They actually, it's the call down that's really good. The Zeus ult. So they managed to finally clean up some kills. This is what their lineup wants to do. They want to get them low so that Bloodseeker can start hitting really hard. You see how he's laying into S4. But then this response just absolutely the way they're lined up.
Yeah.
This was actually, if that Sideblade hit doesn't like splash all the way back, they actually get a decent trade. But Arteezy ends up cleaning up instead. And that's just, you know. In the heat of the moment, it's difficult to position yourself against an Aegis. You're not really paying attention to it.
Very true. I mean, especially because, like you said, it was the best fight they've had so far. They were very focused on the initial part of the fight. And then, unfortunately, didn't take into account the Aegis. And then, of course, TA coming back up. Arteezy cleaning up. Only last man alive, last man standing.
I think
was pretty happy about that.
Overall, the concept of not having enough stuns is a little overrated. I think that, you know, their lineup had a lot of positives. You mentioned, like, they can kite people constantly with the tombstone and the traps. Like, they have great chasing potential with the track, and they just have a ton of damage output. Like, who needs stuns when you just kill people in like half a second? It doesn't really matter. So I think, yes, having disables is important. Sometimes maybe you need to lock down an Ember or a Puck or a Queen of Pain, but having a lot of damage and other utility, because obviously you're sacrificing something if you don't have any stuns. But I think the benefits that they showcase in this lineup was definitely worth it.
The thing about this lineup that Secret is running is, if you think of stuns, I like to think of like ease of execution. Like when you have stuns, it's more determined. It's more defined how you're going to play. Right? It's like this stun selects a target. This is the guy we go on. This is how we play it. But because Secret are so good at playing this style, they don't actually need it. But I would say you take the lineup Secret has, like, and you put it on lesser teams, they would have a really hard time making this lineup work and come together.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it's harder to execute if you don't have stuns and you don't have direct lockdowns. But it doesn't mean that it won't work. It's just harder.
Right. Yeah, it's not a necessity. It's just generally, if you have the choice, most people would choose to take a stun in that last spot. But Secret, proving that they don't necessarily need it. We do have some updates from the other matches. We were watching a couple of them outside. LGD is up 1-0 against Complexity. And then between Navi and C9, the game isn't over, but Navi seems to be ahead. But we know that can go either way when C9's in the game. So we'll have to wait and see until the game ends, and then we'll find out when we get a secure
you only needed to get like 2.5 hours into TI before you made that call. Very impressive.
I caught right on to that one. Hey, after watching the first match, I was like, all right, I see what's going on. I got you, C9. All right, well, game 2 coming up here between Secret and IG. We were just looking at the players, obviously going through just a couple last-minute reviews. And something we discuss every time, I mean, how much do drafts need to change? So far, I mean, someone was calculating on day 0, so yesterday for the wildcard play-ins, we had, 50 heroes that were picked and banned, and 44 of them were played at least once, so picked at least once. So already a pretty big diversity, so generally that means that we have been seeing changes overall. It seems like most people are taking that advice to heart, where you don't want to run the same lineup twice, whether you're winning or losing, especially in a best of 2, right? Because it's not like we're up 1-0 and then we have another shot. It's like you want to secure that 2-0. Yeah. You want to make sure you bring out something new. On the side of IG, you guys already said that draft-wise, we're looking at Tron being pretty aggressive about something you wanted to point out in game 1. But if the draft wasn't the problem and in-game was an issue, do you still think that they should try something new just to give a change of pace for the team, for IG, I mean?
I think it's more Secret's flexibility that's overcoming IG rather than something that IG is doing. I mean, IG is just playing their, sort of standard game Ferrari, trying to do heavy damage, burning, on a hero like he normally plays. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem like anything unusual, right? Whereas Secret, you never know what they're going to pick. We saw them run Keeper to Light and the Queen of Pain, and they always have some different elements. I haven't seen TA on Arteezy in a pretty long time. And it's just always unexpected. And even during a draft, we're like, oh, they never pick Undying third pick. And then, they roll with it. And it's just you never really know what's coming from Secret. And I think that's why they're one of the most formidable teams.
All right. I mean, Winter, any thoughts on IG, whether something they can look for a draft, something that you might even advise if you were there?
I think mainly it's the support. So I feel as much as you talk about Ferrari and the other calls, but I think the primary issue is whether you give Tron and Faith supports that can roam and kill. Wyvern is in my opinion, very defensive at times, and you can't really be very confident in initiating fights. Sometimes you want to wait before you drop your ultimate instead of using your ultimate as a first move spell or trying to make a gang happen. So I would much rather see something like what I mentioned before, a Mirana or even a Conquer, more aggressive play.
Yeah, that's something you guys kept bringing up. We didn't see that in game 1. while we wait, we do have this beautiful scoreboard behind us for the group standings so far. It's quite lovely, but we only have a couple matches to show. But at the very least, I mean, Complexity actually up there with 3 points. They did get that 2-0 against MVP Phoenix. So starting off on strong footing, but they are up against LGD right now. Doesn't sound like it's going too well, but we'll find out in Game 2. Of course, Group B, all zeros yet. We haven't gotten to the Group B matches. We'll get to that in the later half of the day. But right now, I mean, still anything can happen. But we were talking about this earlier, right? With this kind of point system, not only does every match obviously matter more and more, but if we have more ties, then suddenly the 2-0s become like double in value. Because if every other team has tied, your 2-0 is just way more valuable because no one else has had those 3 points. And you're 2 points up ahead of everyone else.
If you have multiple draws, immediately game is hard.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that does say a lot about where the teams are. All right, so right now we are waiting for Secret and IG to decide, who's going to take those points. Secret up 1-0. Do we expect Secret to be able to take it just 2-0, given what we saw in that last game?
I just think they're generally paired very well versus IG. Just because I think IG relies on like superior teamwork, not necessarily like superior drafting or overall strategy. I think they try and outplay other teams, and Secret is really good at outplaying other teams. And I think when they get caught off guard, like Fnatic strong lanes, for example, or get outdrafted, which I don't think IG outdrafts very often, like by let's say EG, I think that's when they're most vulnerable. And IG, I just don't think that Secret views them as a big threat.
Okay, what about you, Sindri?
Once again, I think they have to play early aggression way more than they do. I think the double roaming is a solution. I like the Mirana suggestion by Winter.
Do you like Chen plus Shadow Demon?
Chen, Shadow Demon.
Something along the lines.
Chen has kind of fallen off because of the nerf.
Something that can bring aggression, for the first few minutes.
Enchantress.
Yeah, Enchantress. I would still like to see the Kunkka. I also think it's a hero that actually could work very well against Secret because they like playing. They like taking these fights where S4 generally puts them ahead. With like something like a Queen of Pain, you burst and then you follow through, and the Ghost Ship, of course, can buy you that time and get a little bit of mitigation so that you can actually have a chance at fighting back. I think it's an underappreciated support hero, but it kind of is a niche pick. But if a team is pulling it out, it's probably going to be IG, who have played it a couple of times. So I would love to see that, but maybe they're saving that for later.
And Winter, I mean, I assume just given you guys have kind of been on the same board the whole time about early aggression.
I mean, as long as it's something that helps to secure kills early and get control of the lanes and the general momentum of the game from the start, that's something that IG should look to go for, I feel.
All right, so let's assume that, Secret goes in 2-0s this game, maybe even the next one that they play. Do you think Secret will ever have to look back at Fnatic's game and be like, all right, that was just like a fluke, or will they be like, all right, we still can't ever let that happen in the draft and give them all these early aggression?
Well,
heroes?
Secret generally has well-rounded drafts, which means that their early game isn't super strong. It's generally strong, but not super strong. So when a team like Fnatic really commits heavily to that part of the game, I think they need to adapt their draft to be less strong late game and more strong early game. And I think that is one of the very few issues that they have in their drafting.
All right, so should, regardless of the results of their future games, definitely something to look back on and improve upon if they want to be that champion that most people are expecting them to be. But again, we've had quite a few upsets in the past TI. So
yeah, it's like a gentle reminder that you shouldn't forget about the power of your lanes. You should make sure that you somewhat decent lanes. You can't go for lanes that are too greedy and and you get punished by that.
Winter's so nice. He's just a gentle reminder. He's not like it's actually just stabbing you in the truth that lanes matter, but it's just a gentle reminder that you might want to care about your laning phase.
I feel like gentle reminder would not be 33. It's like a little it's a little rude reminder.
It's a reality check.
At best, it's questionable. At best, that's one of the lines that he likes.
At best, questionable. All right. Well, hopefully we're not going to see that from Secret this game. We are going into draft.